Financial Argument. Follow us on YouTube.
Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, as we are moving further and further into this year, we can see that there are many aspects of the economy that are really not doing well. And I'm going to say this once again, I've said it since I started. You need to get prepared for what is coming, because what we're seeing right now is a complete breakdown of the system. I mean, think about it. Just a year ago or 2 years ago, they were out there telling us how great the recovery was going. Auto manufacturing was telling us how great car sales were, how great housing was, how fantastic retail was doing. Online sales is incredible. And fast forward to today, everything is just completely breaking down. Now, everything that I just said, that was being reported on the corporate media. That was being reported by the Fed, by the government at the time. And we were looking at it saying, well, no, it looks kind of like the opposite of what they're saying. It doesn't look like things are doing well. It doesn't look like the auto manufacturers are actually doing well. And when we looked into the numbers and looked at what they were doing, we saw that they were channel stuffing. And then we realized what they're doing is they're producing a lot of cars, which makes manufacturing look a lot better. And every time they delivered a car to a dealership lot, they counted that as a sale. And they continually did this to make us believe that car sales were doing fantastic. And then they also added incentives. They allowed subprime people to come in to move those cars later on. Could they move all of the cars? No. The lots stayed full. And what we're seeing right now is that GM is reporting its June results, which again are disappointing. They're down 4.7%, more than the expected 3.4% decline. Now, what we're seeing here is that Chevy, GMC, Buick, Cadillac, we're looking at sales that are down by negative 6.4%, negative 3.6%, negative 11.8%, and the situation is not getting any better. If we look at the channel stuffing, we see GM's channel stuffing just hit a new all-time high. And what does this mean? Well, the number of cars that are on the lot right now are the highest since the summer before the recession officially began in 2008. Now, GM, Ford, Chrysler, they posted year-on-year sales decline of about 6% on average. And we can see at this point that the automobile manufacturing industry, it has turned downward. And it's not getting better, it's getting a lot worse. When we turn to housing and we look at construction spending, well, this does not look good at all. The Econoday consensus, well, they expected a bounce in May for construction spending, but the only bounce was in April, and the only reason they had a bounce in April is because they revised a number from negative 1.4 to negative 0.7%. May, well, nothing happened. And what we're seeing right now is that residential construction spending is down 0.6% overall, and this includes declines in single-family homes, residential improvements, especially in multifamily units. And in the past, we saw construction spending moving up. Everything has turned around right now. And what we're starting to realize is when you cannot keep the illusion alive, when you don't have those individuals in government, in the Fed, manipulating these numbers, things start to fall apart. And this is what we're seeing in the government right now, where a lot of these individuals, well, they're gone. And the illusion is falling apart right in front of our eyes. It's almost like Obamacare. When Obama was in office, he had the ability to create the illusion by moving funds around, by manipulating the numbers, letting everyone know how great it was, that 18, 20 million people were joining. And of course, a lot of those individuals already had insurance. A lot of the people were on Medicaid. And while you're in office, you're able to manipulate the entire thing. once you leave office, and a lot of these people leave and you can't manipulate these numbers, you see the real truth shine through and you see it completely collapse on itself. And this is why, as these insurers get wind of what's really happening and they're seeing that all these, co-ops, they're closing left and right, there's only like 4 left, they're out there saying, we don't want to be in this. Now, what's very interesting is that manufacturing really has gone nowhere. We haven't brought back manufacturing as of yet. Yes, Trump is planning on doing this because he needs to do this for the reset of the country. We need manufacturing in this country. We cannot survive on a service industry. And what's very interesting about this is the corporate media, well, they're all over the place. Now, we have 2 stories coming out about manufacturing today. And one is from Market. And they're saying that the June report on U.S. manufacturing said that manufacturing growth weakens again in June. Now, this is coming from Chief Economist Chris Williamson, saying that manufacturers reported a disappointing end to the second quarter, with few signs of growth picking up anytime soon. Usually, Market is pretty darn close to what is really happening in the economy. Then we have Bloomberg, and of course, they come out with this article, and the other corporate media's outlets, they pick up on this article. Now, Bloomberg came out, and their article reads, "Manufacturing pickup in U.S. signals boost to economic growth." Now, we have 2 opposite things that are out there today. And they're saying that American factories powered up in June at the fastest pace in nearly 3 years. Production, orders, employment, all thriving. Really? How possibly can this be happening? The automobile industry, which is a lot of the manufacturing in this country, is channel stuffing the dealership lots. Now, the dealership lots, they're at their peak. Automobile manufacturers, they're not producing as much as they were before. Actually, that is declining right now. So one of these stories is completely fake, and we kind of know which one it is. But what this shows us is that they're all over the place. And we can see that they can't make heads or tails of what's really going on anymore, because remember, a lot of their stories, they don't come from investigating anything. A lot of their information comes from the intelligence community. It comes from the deep state. They tell them what to put out there. They tell them to spin the headlines. And things are basically breaking down right now. We see out in Silicon Valley, while things are beginning to crack out there. And Wolf Richter, he is reporting that the Silicon Valley commercial real estate, well, it's barely hanging on. And there are parts where it has let go already. And he's saying on the Great American Parkway, there are so many offices that are for lease right now. It's absolutely ridiculous. And from a year ago, it is up 19%. And there are just so many empty buildings. And he shows all these different pictures of these buildings just standing there completely empty, saying, yes, we're ready to lease. And it looks like the shrubs around it are overgrown. They can't move them. And this is just the beginning, because what we're seeing is a complete breakdown of everything. And just yesterday we reported on how New Jersey, Connecticut, Maine, Illinois, and many other states, they're all having problems. And it's just getting worse and worse as time goes on. When we look at Illinois, we can see they're trying to raise the tax rate. They're trying to raise the corporate income tax rate. And this is just going to force a lot of people out of the state. It's going to force a lot of companies out of the state. We already see it in Connecticut. And this is not going to help the situation. And I know the governor is out there saying, listen, I'll pass this, but it has to be a temporary tax hike, because he doesn't want to put the burden on the Illinois people. You know what happens when they pass these things. It is never temporary. Yes, they say that in the beginning, but what happens, it becomes permanent, because once they start taking those funds, they don't want to give it up. So what we're seeing right now is the beginning of the end. We're seeing things break down state by state. Pensions are in trouble. The automobile manufacturers are in trouble. Retail is in trouble. And you have to remember, this entire country, the recovery that we've been talking about, they based all these jobs on these part-time retail food industry jobs that were created during this entire period. Now we see this retail food industry area, it is completely breaking down, and people are losing hundreds of thousands of jobs. The whole thing is completely falling apart. All the pieces to this economic collapse puzzle, they're all coming together. Think about right now, go back 3 years ago, at the height of the illusion, where they blew the bubbles up, or they were blowing the bubbles up with stimulus telling you how great things were, and people were feeling great, even though we knew it was a complete illusion. 3 years to now, look how everything has changed. When you can't keep the manipulation up, when the manipulation fails, the truth always comes through. It doesn't matter if the stock market is at 50,000 points. Think about it. If the stock market's at 50,000 points and we have strip malls that are empty, we have malls that are empty, we have people, instead of 46 million people, we have 130 million people on food stamps, and we have retail stores that are closing in droves, and corporations that are laying off people. It doesn't really matter if the market goes to 100,000, because at this point, people will stop believing. And once they stop believing, everything falls apart. And we are headed to that period. This is what happened pretty much approaching 2008. Now, everyone thought, well, subprime is contained. There's no problems in the economy. The housing market can't go down. The stock market at that time was at 14,000 points, the highest it's ever been. People thought this could last forever. People were still purchasing homes, 1, 2, 3, 4 homes, and trying to rent them out. People were still flipping at this point. And then all of a sudden, things started to change. People stopped believing, because in the real economy, during this period leading up to the stock market crash, there were corporations laying off like crazy. People were just out of work, and interest rates were moving up, and people couldn't afford their homes because they lost their jobs and they can't make the payments. They couldn't rent out the houses anymore that they purchased because people didn't have that type of funds anymore. Everything started to fall apart, and it was a chain reaction. Companies were falling apart. This is what we're seeing right now. This is the lead up to the big crash. To put this in perspective, take one of those balloons. You ever have one of those balloons where it's really hard to blow up and it takes you a very long time? Well, that was the illusion they were creating. That was the bubbles they were creating. They were blowing up these bubbles. Very hard to do. And it took 1 year, 2 years. You got the balloon a quarter way full. 3 years, 4 years, it's halfway full. 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, it's almost full. Now take a pin. This is the crash. Stick it into the balloon. How fast does it take to deflate the balloon? It takes a second, a millisecond. It took many, many minutes, and if you convert that into years, many years to blow it up. It only takes one needle, one black swan, the people not believing anymore, to bring the whole thing down. That's where we're at right now. And the whole entire system is going to come crashing down. And there's nothing we can do. You can't stop it. There's too much debt. People don't have the funds. People are being laid off all over the place. There are more and more malls that are becoming empty. Strip malls that are becoming empty. Commercial real estate, where there's a lot of leases out there. A lot of people at the height of the bubble right now are trying to sell their homes, and they're scratching their head saying, why is it taking so long? I don't understand this. Those individuals that are getting laid off from work are saying, how come I can't find that job? Something doesn't make sense. Those people that just got these new jobs are wondering why they were just laid off. The whole thing is starting to fall apart. The whole thing is coming down. This is why you need to get prepared. This is why you need to get ready, because we're going to be going through this period of time where it's not going to be pleasant. And you need to have food, you need to have water, you need to have supplies to get by, to get through this reset. And once you do, and you put everything in order and you're prepared for this with gold, silver, maybe you're buying cryptocurrencies, cash on hand, protecting your wealth, protecting your family, you'll come out on the other end a lot better off, especially a lot better off than those people that didn't prepare at all. I mean, think about it. Go back to the 30s. All those individuals that didn't turn in their gold, that kept their gold and got more and more gold and hid it away, those individuals made out a lot better than those who turned it in.